Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The deep void of space stretched endlessly in every direction, a dark canvas flecked with starlight, cold and indifferent to the struggles of mankind. On the fringes of this vast expanse, floating just beyond the shimmering rings of a gas giant, was the outpost of Argos. It wasn't too much to look at, just another colony among the thousands scattered across the galaxy. But to Jonathan Jax Rivers, it was more than a strategic point on a map. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of humanity, self-resilience in a galaxy growing increasingly hostile. Jack stood in the command center of his mercenary cruiser, the Samurai's Edge, his arms crossed over his chest. The light from the star outside bathed him in a dim orange glow, casting long shadows across his worn features. He was a man who had seen too many wars, too many betrayals, and far too many deaths. Once he had stood at the helm of the human empire, a president who had commanded the respect and fear of his people, but those days were behind him now. "Are you sure about this, Jax?" Mira Kane, his second-in-command, asked from behind him. Her voice was quiet, but edged with concern. She was a striking woman, with sharp features and piercing green eyes that could see through any lie. Years as an intelligence officer had made her suspicious of everyone and everything, but Jax valued her instinct. He sighed and glanced at her. "We don't have much choice. If we don't step in, Argos Ivy will fall, and it'll be just another colony wiped off the map. The Black Shroud isn't just after resources this time. They want to make a statement." Mira frowned, her brows knitting together. "Tare, the Galactic Council should be handling this. It's their responsibility." Jax shook his head. "The Council, Sarah's too busy arguing about trade routes and political alliances. They'll be late to the party as usual, and by the time they arrive, it'll be too late. We were the only ones who can stop this." He turned back to the viewport, watching the distant stars shimmer in the dark. It had been years since his presidency, years since he'd been ousted by political rivals who found his methods too aggressive, too militaristic. They wanted diplomacy. Jax had given them war. But in the end, the people had grown tired of conflict, and Jax had been forced to step down. Now he led a ragtag group of mercenaries, the Samurai Syndicate, on missions the Council couldn't or wouldn't handle. "We have to act now," Jax continued, his voice firm. "Argos Ivy is the key to this entire sector. If it falls, the Black Shroud will gain control of the mineral supply lines, and the other colonies stand a chance." Mira was silent for a moment, her gaze hard as she weighed their options. Then she nodded. All right, what's the plan?" Jack's lips curled into a grim smile. "We were going to hit them before they even know we were here." The Samurai's Edge drifted in low orbit over Argos Ivy, hidden in the shadow of one of its moons. The planet below was a barren wasteland, dotted with industrial complexes and mining facilities. It wasn't the kind of place anyone would want to call home, but it was vital to the survival of the human colony. The mineral-rich soil of Argos Ivy fueled the factories and shipyards of the outer colonies, making it a prime target for the Black Shroud, a terrorist organization bent on destabilizing human control in the galaxy. Jax stood at the hollow table in the center of the briefing room, his team gathered around him. Rook, the team's grizzled combat specialist, leaned against the wall, his arms crossed over his broad chest. His face was a roadmap of scars, each one a testament to the battles he fought over the years. Beside him, Lena Drafin, their pilot, fidgeted with a data pad, her eyes scanning the latest intel report. She was young, brash, and still carrying the rebellious streak that had landed her in Jack's crew after the Civil War. Jax tapped the holotable, and a 3D image of Argos Ivy appeared, highlighting the colony's key infrastructure. "The Black Shroud has already infiltrated the colony's leadership. We've identified at least 3 high-ranking officials working with them. Our job is to root them out before the attack begins." Mira stepped forward, her fingers dancing across the holo-control. The image zoomed in on the main colony hub, a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings surrounded by defense towers and anti-aircraft batteries. "We know the Shroud knows they'll use sabotage and espionage to weaken the colony's sound defenses before launching a full-scale assault. We need to cut off their spy network and secure the colony's key assets before that happens." Lena raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly are we supposed to do that with just the 4 of us?" Jack smirked.
We don't need an army. We just need to be smarter than they are.
Rook grunted in approval. I like it hit 'em where it hurts. Before they even know, we refair. Jax nodded. Exactly. We go in quiet, take out the spies, and secure the shield generators and comms tower. Once that's done, we'll be ready for whatever the Shroud throws at us. The night sky over Agozavi was a black expanse, the faint glow of the planet's distant star barely illuminating the surface. Jax and his team moved swiftly through the shadows, their black combat suits blending seamlessly into the environment. The colony hub loomed ahead, its towering buildings casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Mira led the way, her eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. She tapped her wrist communicator, her voice barely a whisper, and Jax. "In our tour, we're clear so far. No patrols to..." Jax nodded, his grip tightening on the handle of his plasma rifle. Keep it that way. We were not here to start a fight, not yet." They reached the perimeter of the colony, slipping past the automated defense turrets and into the narrow alleys between the buildings. The colony was eerily quiet. The only sound, the faint hum of the shield generators in the distance. Mira signaled for them to stop, her eyes narrowing as she studied a nearby security terminal. "I can patch into their network from here. Give me a minute." She crouched beside the terminal, pulling a small data spike from her belt and inserting it into the console. The screen flickered, then lit up with a stream of data. Mira's fingers flew across the keys as she navigated the colony's security system, bypassing firewalls and encryption protocols with practiced ease. "Got it," she muttered after a few tense moments. SIV locked out their internal sensors and disabled the comms towers. The 1 TB no call for help. "Codex," replied his voice low. "Now we just need to find those spies." Inside the colony central command center, the tension was palpable. Governor Halstead, a portly man with thinning hair and a nervous disposition, paced back and forth, his eyes darting to the main display screen every few seconds. The Black Shroud said attack was imminent, and he knew the colony, some offenses, were woefully unprepared. Halstead wiped the sweat from his brow, glancing nervously at his second-in-command, Counselor Marek, a tall, gaunt man with sunken eyes and a permanent scowl. "You ready?" Halstead asked, his voice trembling. Merrick's expression remained unreadable as he nodded. "Tiradimir, the Shroud will be here soon. We've done all we can to weaken the colony's sus defenses. The rest is up to them." Halstead swallowed hard. He didn't feel like this, didn't he, like working with terrorists? But the Shroud had made it clear that refusal wasn't an option. If he didn't cooperate, they would kill him and his family, and so he had done as they asked, feeding them information, sabotaging the colony's defenses from within. Jax and his team moved silently through the narrow corridors of the colony hub, their weapons drawn and senses on high alert. The colony's sense defenses were crippled, but the real threat came from within, traitors lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike when the Black Shroud arrived. Jax knew they had to act fast. Every second they wasted gave the enemy more time to prepare. Mira led the way, her movements precise and controlled, the years of field experience and intelligence showing in every step. She stopped suddenly, raising a hand to signal a halt ahead. Two figures in the darkened hallway whispered in low voices, their faces partially obscured by shadow. Jax could make out the glint of a communication device in one of their hands. Without hesitation, Mira moved forward, her pistol raised in one smooth motion. She fired 2 shots, the sound muffled by her silencer. Both figures crumpled to the ground, their bodies lifeless. Mira quickly approached, checking their credentials. "Confirmed," she whispered into her comm. These two were feeding intel directly to the Black Shroud. Jax crouched beside her, inspecting the communication device. "They were about to signal the attack," he muttered. "We cut it close." Lena, standing behind them, kept an eye on their surroundings, her fingers twitching nervously on the grip of her weapon. "We need to move if they retest close to launching the attack. We're running out of time." Jax nodded, agreed. "Mira, get the data off that device. We need to know how much they've compromised." Mira worked quickly, her fingers moving in a blur as she hacked into the device. After a few moments, she looked up, her expression grim. They've got full schematics of the colony, defense systems, and troop movement. If we don't stop them, the Shroud will tear through this place in minutes. Jack stood, his jaw tightening. Then we take the fight to them. They continued their march through the colony, weaving between the massive storage silos and industrial plants that dotted the landscape. As they approached the heart of the colony, Jax caught sight of movement in the distance, a group of Black Shroud operatives, heavily armed and advancing quickly. Jax motioned for his team to take cover behind a row of cargo crate. "We've got company," he whispered, glancing at Rook ready. Rook flashed a wolfish grin and hefted his plasma rifle. "I was born ready." The Black Shroud operatives moved closer, their weapons drawn, and their eyes scanning the area. Jax waited for the right moment, his finger hovering over the trigger. When the lead operative stepped into range, Jax fired, the shot hitting the man squarely in the chest. Chaos erupted as the rest of the operatives scrambled for cover, returning fire in all directions. Rook let out a bellowing laugh as he unleashed a hail of plasma bolts, cutting down 2 more operatives before they could react. Mira and Lena moved in, synching, flanking the enemy and taking out stragglers with precision shot. The firefight was brutal, but the Samurai Syndicate had the upper hand. Jack stayed low, firing methodically as he advanced, his heart pounding in his chest. The Black Shroud operatives were well-trained, but they hadn't expected to meet this kind of resistance. One by one, they fell until the only sound left was the crackle of burning debris and the faint hum of the colony, Saraji grit. Rumor Clear Rook called out, his voice echoing through the deserted street. He kicked the body of one of the operatives, nudging it with his boot. "Looks like they weren't expecting a fight." "They never do," Jax muttered, lowering his weapon. He glanced around, his mind already racing through the next step. "Let's get to the shield generators. If the Shroud Saiyan force is on its way, we will need those shields up and running." They moved quickly, navigating through the labyrinth of industrial buildings until they reached the shield control station. The facility was heavily guarded, with automated turrets scanning the area and armed security personnel standing watch. Jax frowned. The guards wore the insignia of the colony, its defense force, but something about them felt off. Mira narrowed her eyes. "These aren't our standard colony soldiers." Jax nodded. "I know. They're Black Shroud. They've already taken control of the shield station." Without a word, the team prepared for another assault. This time, Jax led the charge, throwing a flash grenade into the group of guards and rushing forward as the explosion disoriented them. Rook and Lena followed closely behind, taking down the guards before they could recover. The fight was short but intense, the sound of gunfire echoing through the metallic corridors of the station. In the end, the Black Shroud guards were no match for the Samurai Syndicate's expertise. With the station secured, Jax quickly moved to the control console, typing in a series of commands. "The shields are coming online," Jax said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "That'll buy us some time." Mira moved beside him, her eyes scanning the holographic display. "Not much, though. The Black Shroud's main force will be here soon." Jax grimaced. "Then we make our stand here. We hold the shield station and we hold the colony. We've any come too far to let them take this place." The team fortified their position, preparing for the inevitable onslaught. The colony's shield hummed to life, casting a faint blue glow across the sky. Jax stood at the edge of the station, looking out at the horizon. In the distance, he could see the telltale streaks of incoming dropships' Black Shroud reinforcement. "This is it," he muttered to himself. "The final stand." The dropships landed with a thundering crash, their doors sliding open to reveal wave after wave of heavily armed soldiers. The Black Shroud had brought their full force to bear on Arga's IV, and they were ready to finish the job. Jack's grip tightened on his rifle as the enemy advanced, their boots pounding against the metal floor. Plasma bolts flew through the air, sizzling past Jack's head as he ducked behind cover. Rook returned fire with a fierce roar, his plasma rifle lighting up the battlefield. Mira and Lena moved in syncing, flanking the enemy and taking down soldiers with ruthless efficiency. But for every Black Shroud soldier they killed, 2 more seemed to take their place. The sheer number of enemies was overwhelming, and Jax knew they couldn't hold out forever. "We were getting overrun," Lena shouted, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. "We need to fall back." Jax gritted his teeth, his mind racing as he assessed the situation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but there was no retreat. If they fell back now, the colony would fall with them. "No retreat," Jax growled. "We hold the line." The battle raged on, plasma bolts flying in every direction as the Black Shroud pressed their attack. Jax fought with everything he had, his muscles burning and his lungs heaving with every breath. His vision blurred, but he kept moving, kept firing, kept fighting. Then out of the chaos, a figure emerged, clad in sleek black armor, with a crimson visor that glowed menacingly. Vera XLR, the leader of the Black Shroud, strode forward. Her presence was like a shadow descending over the battlefield, and the fighting seemed to stop as both sides turned to face her. "You must be Jax Rivers," Vera said, her voice smooth and cold. "I've heard a lot about you." Jax leveled his rifle at her, his finger hovering over the trigger. "I can just say the same for you." Vera chuckled, the sound sending a chill down Jack's spine. "You were outnumbered, outmatched, and surrounded. Surrender now, and I'll consider sparing your life." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Not a chance." With a flick of her wrist, Vera activated a plasma sword, its blade humming with lethal energy, then let Seth finish this. The final battle began, a whirlwind of chaos and destruction. Jax and Vera clashed in a fierce duel, their weapons flashing in the dim light of the shield station. Vera was faster than Jax had anticipated, but he fought with the strength and determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. The battle seemed to stretch on for an eternity, but in the end, Jax else will prove stronger. With a final desperate strike, he drove his plasma blade into Vera's chest, her eyes widening in shock as the life drained from her body. Vera collapsed to the ground, and with her death, the Black Shroud's forces faltered. The remaining soldiers scattered, retreating in disarray as the Samurai Syndicate pressed their advantage. The battle was over. Argus Ivy was saved. But as Jack stood over Vera's lifeless body, his heart heavy with the weight of the lives lost, he couldn't help but wonder how many more battles like this would there be? How many more times would he be called upon to save humanity from the brain? He didn't have the answers. All he knew was that, as long as there were threats to humanity, survival, he would be there to face them, because that's all what it meant to be a galactic samurai.